What's going on, everybody? This is B. Scott.
God, you're talking to a god right now. In the third wheel.
And this is the first 4 downs. Let's get it. I think the question for the quarterbacks would be, why would you take these guys? What is the purpose of drafting Carson Wentz, Russell Wilson, and Tom Brady? And the ultimate question is why are we drafting them? Are they valued at the ADP that they're being drafted at? And obviously the opportunities, we know the career these guys have had, all three, whether it be injury, whether it be limited passes with ultimate numbers, looking at Russell Wilson, and then obviously the GOAT with Tom Brady, 6 Super Bowls. So
these 3 quarterbacks are cut from a different cloth. These 3 quarterbacks play for legacy. They play for the chest. They play for namesake. All 3 quarterbacks have a Super Bowl ring. Now, with Carson Wentz, he has a lackluster Super Bowl ring in 2017, due to an injury in Week 14 against the LA Rams, where he suffered an ACL tear. But he did dope numbers that year. It led to Nick Foles getting that Super Bowl ring and getting the love in Philadelphia. I think he's back for redemption this year. They added an all-time great in Philadelphia with Deshaun Jackson. Every quarterback that he's ever had, he's made him better.
Well, that's all right. I got you. Carson Wentz for me, ultimately is being undervalued in the sense that he's an MVP candidate when he sees the field, period. When he's on the field, you know what you're going to get out of him. I want to say, what do you have, 37 touchdowns or 32 touchdowns, 2017?
I think 33.
What's the numbers?
2017, he had 33 touchdowns, 3,300 yards.
Only 7 interceptions, right? So
that's
30
good numbers.
That's what I'm saying. 33 touchdowns, 7 interceptions. So you stretch that and give him 2 more games, you never know. He could finish with 4 or 5 more touchdowns in that season. So almost 40 touchdowns right there. Over 4,000 yards. That's going to get him talking in the MVP conversation. And that's probably going to finish inside the top 5 at the quarterback position.
Yeah, so, and that's 2 years removed where Carson Wentz finished the number 5 quarterback, where Tom Brady finishes the number 3 quarterback, Russell Wilson finishes the number 1 quarterback.
Yeah, you look back at 2017, only two years ago. So you got quarterbacks that you're ultimately fading in the top rounds and hoping to be able to swoop on Russell Wilson or Carson Wentz in the 8th round, and value guys who realistically this year, especially Wilson, has fallen outside of the top 10. A lot of people were actually disrespecting him, kind of. I
believe so as well.
And it's crazy to me because he has such a dual threat. He may not have had to run as much last year, but it doesn't mean he can't do it. It doesn't mean he's not going to do it. And then on top of that, in limited numbers, you see what he had. He had one of the lowest amount of passes in the league and still finished with 30 touchdowns last year.
Yeah, 427 attempts, only 3,450 yards, but still 35 TDs on the year.
Here's the thing about Russell Wilson that people don't realize. Since Russell Wilson, the 7 years that Russell Wilson has been a quarterback in the National Football League, 6 of those years he's finished in the top 10 of quarterbacks. You take 50% of those, he finished in the top 3. Okay? So you think about the dominant run that they had when they had the Super Bowl run and everything like that. It's identical. Okay? So they rush the ball in the top 2% of teams, and they pass the ball in pretty much average last. You know what I mean? So what Pete Carroll has done last year, you know what I mean, started to build that running game back up. Of course, they lose Darrell Bevell and Marshawn Lynch. You know what I mean? At one point, you got to hang up the cleats and start all over. So they build that with Chris Carson and Rashard Penny, who are capable of doing it again this year, I believe. They let Mike Davis go, so that shows you how comfortable they are with those two. They have established a dominant running game. They have established a young, new defense. You know what I mean? That are very good with that 12th man in Seattle. What they did do, and it's very common there's two common denominators in all 3 of these quarterbacks. The head coaches and the quarterbacks, and making them relevant consistently every year. And also what they did this year in adding speed to the offense. So they added Gary Jennings out at run 4-2 4.2 type speed. Expected to run out of the slot this year. Then they added DK Metcalf first in the draft this year, who runs a 4.3, 6.4, ridiculous. Absolute monster. He just had a knee surgery or whatever. Expected to be back week 1. We'll see. With his injuries, we never know when he's coming back. We don't know what we're going to get to see from DK this year. But they do have Jennings and they do have Lockett. Very fast. Okay? So I think that opens up the field. And you notice in the last 2 seasons, Russell Wilson's rushing numbers have been down. I think that makes, you know what I'm saying, that field open up to where he can make smart runs. You know what I mean? He don't get hit very cleanly a lot like that. He's a smart quarterback, very cerebral. So I think he'll be able to get back to that rushing part of it and boost him back into the top 10 of quarterbacks this year.
You also got to remember last year with Doug Baldwin, he was injured the whole year, struggled through playing, and that could have possibly another thing that could have dropped Wilson's numbers passing-wise. The touchdowns are there because of Lockett on the deep balls. And
they also had a fail in free agency with Brandon Marshall
to
play the X, and I think that's what they did to replace DK They drafted DK Metcalf to replace the X. They never had a traditional X. So I think DK is going to run the number 1. Tyler Lockett is going to run the number 2. And Greg Jennings will run the slot.
Yeah, and you know what? Jerron Brown, he's still there, and they're mixing and matching him.
Yeah.
He played pretty well in the second preseason game. He made some good plays.
And they still got David Moore, guys like that.
Yeah, some good depth at the wide receiver position to make plays. So especially down the field, because they're going to run the ball, unbelievably. But it shows last year Russell Wilson with 35 touchdowns and 100 less attempts than probably the next 5 quarterbacks. So
very efficient.
Ultimately, 8th round value for Russell Wilson, even if you drafted him, I still put him inside the top 7 at quarterback. And I would take a chance, especially on Russell Wilson falling out, where you're getting a guy who could finish as a top 3 quarterback. You never know.
Yeah.
And now they lose Mike Davis in free agency, so they got a lot riding on Carson and Penny. And Carson, he's had his little share of injuries, concerns, got his knee scoped in the offseason, but nothing serious. He looks good in preseason, so definitely high up, ADP riser. And Penny hasn't looked so good. Maybe that has a tail to them transitioning their offense, So Russell Wilson is still super valued in the 8th round, and the upside is just there.
Yeah, and you can expect them to put more points on the board given the NFC West. Anyway.
Yeah, so let's jump back to Tom Brady. 12th round value, 13th round getting drafted. You're pretty much drafting him as a back end quarterback, or a number 2 quarterback. If you're drafting 2 quarterbacks, which most people do in fantasy, if you don't draft the number 1 quarterback in fantasy, you're probably drafting 2 quarterbacks, or taking a chance on a second quarterback. But if you're looking for a consistent backup who could finish inside the top 10, Brady is right there. It's perfect. He's going to be consistent regardless, but between the 10 and 15. And who knows? They lose out on Gronkowski, a big target and a big factor in that offense over the last few years. But they had Josh Gordon for the long haul, hopefully. And with them adding Demaryius Thomas, drafting N'Keal Harry, they still got Edelman, who's going to play all 16 games this year instead of 12 last year, suspended 4, so they got Edelman for the full season. They're pretty deep at wide receiver. And their running back, Sony Michel, who they're going to utilize as long as he can stay healthy. They draft a young running back to fill the void behind him. They still got James White. They still got Rex Burkhead, play the passing down roles or inside the red zone. So you never know. You already know the Patriots are going to run the football. They have efficiently over the last 10 years. They've always been able to utilize running the football. So losing out on Gronkowski there's a huge void to fill. But Josh Gordon in a full season in an offense where he's already acclimated. Last season you saw in the beginning that he wasn't really acclimated in the first few games, and it took a while for him to get acclimated in the offense, and you saw what he can do. So now you got a full season to Josh Gordon. It's going to be ridiculous over there. And you never know. Brady could throw 40 touchdowns. He's still got juice and he's still got gas in the tank, to say the least, at 42 years old. So
somebody better burp him.
Yeah. You think about Tom Brady and Bill Belichick. What you do know about that offense is that over the last several seasons, they've been top 10 in offense, period. Knowing that the running back situation is going to be committee, but you know when it's going to be dominant. So you don't have to worry about that at all. The offensive line is going to be dominant. But you think about Tom Brady over the last 2 seasons, his longest deep ball touchdown has been on average around 64 yards. That's down in his career. Also, what you do realize is that over the last 2 seasons, Rob Gronkowski didn't really play that much of a major factor in that because he's been hurt and missed several games. What I do know with Gronkowski being gone is that those targets, it's not a systematical thing with the tight end where they throw to the tight end. Those targets are going to go to the players that Brady can depend on the most. And those players are going to be Flash Gordon and Julian Edelman. With the host of N'Keal Harry and Demaryius Thomas, and you forget they still have Philip Dorsett over there. You know what I mean? I think Brady will be back surged in the top 10 of quarterbacks, and he's almost getting undrafted. It's absolutely ridiculous. Betting against Tom Brady is like betting against Michael Jordan in his prime. It's absolutely ridiculous. It is very disrespectful for him to be drafted that late. In your fantasy drafts, Patrick Mahomes is going to be gone within 1 to 3 rounds. The next up is Deshaun Watson. You could still take Brady late. That offense is going to be high powered, and they're going to be there. Just like you said, the last time that Gronkowski was not there, Tom Brady threw for 50 touchdowns. And you add an elite talent like Josh Gordon all season long, whose career averages are better than Randy Moss, man, this guy can potentially win your league, and it costs you absolutely nothing. And what you've done there is loaded your bench with stuff. Loaded your bench with a lot of positional players that you could possibly trade up for and get elite talent. All 3 of these quarterbacks average on their career around 20 points a game. You know what I mean? At the upside, Brady could throw a 40. You know what I mean? Wentz could throw a 40. Wilson can throw a 40. But average, with Josh Gordon back, I think Brady can average close to 25 to 30. That's scary to be drafted in the 13th round.
Yeah, so ultimately, pairing these quarterbacks, in my opinion, would be great, or pairing Brady at all to anybody. If you're looking for a second quarterback to fill your void on your team, I mean, look no further than Tom Brady. The guy's consistent. You already know what you're going to get with him, and he could have upside with Josh Gordon. Without that tight end position, they might be throwing more downfield. You never know. So they're going to run the ball. I know Brady's older, but he can still make all the throws on the field.
You think about Josh Gordon come back, that's going to make Sony a beast. They have to respect Josh Gordon's speed. For the first 4 downs, this has been B. Scott, the third wheel, and as always, G.O.D.